right, let's go ahead and dive right in. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. Today we're going to be talking about some strategies um, to like increase your performance around payments. So just some little housekeeping items before we begin. So today's session will be recorded. So everyone that registered will get the link to watch this afterwards as well. And then if there are any questions along the way, please use the Q&A icon within Zoom, and we will try to get those either during the call at the end, or we will follow up with you after the session. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Greg Dzurinda. I am the Director of Product Management here at PairSoft. I've been with the company for going on 8 years now, I believe. And prior to that, I was actually a client of like PaperSave for about 2 years. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So let's talk about some of the top challenges that we're going to be, solving for you with PairSoft Pay. Whoops. So a couple things that we want to call out here. So like lengthy approval times, right? So like 41% of like payment teams say that the slow like approval process like really hurts like their cash flow, and creates a lot of like inefficiencies within the process as well, and stranger like relationships with your vendors. So like taking all that time of manually moving that paper around, trying to get those approvals, like getting them into your ERP, like just causes way too much delay. Fraud prevention is another big area now too, like especially in this day and age. So 34% of AP departments have been hit with some sort of fraud attack. It, and like those fraud attacks can vary. So like sending an email with updated payment instructions, and somebody not verifying those payment instructions before they start sending out invoices, to like some other person, right? 22% of AP teams struggle with real-time access to the payment data. So seeing where all of their invoices are, where all of their payments are, like getting ahead of like payments that haven't been deposited to the vendor yet, like checks that go out that go past that 90-day period. Just having visibility in all of that is very challenging. And then on top of that, like even with all of those challenges, it still costs almost $10 per payment, to process those payments like in-house. So like cutting those checks, like getting those EFTs, like processed through your bank, like all of that is just very, like time consuming, and like there's also fees like involved there as well. So let's talk about fraud for a moment. So like an interesting fact is, like checks are 22 times like more likely to be involved in fraud. And like one of the payment options that PairSoft offers is a virtual card program as well, which is significantly less likely to have any fraud like when it comes to that type of payment. And in 2022 and 2023, checks are still widely used across organizations for a like preferred type of payment. So like getting those like those payment methods converted over to some like digital format is one way to help that. But even ACH is still like one of those payment methods that can be hit by fraud. So like getting those updated payment instructions verified, like routing account number like verified, is very time consuming and sometimes very difficult to be handled by that AP team. So let's talk about how we can help with that, right? So like the first like step here is to get those payments converted over to some sort of electronic payment. While that's not a requirement, right? We do work with you to try to get those conversions over. Um, some of the benefits of having that done is to like reduce some of that manual process of printing those checks and sending them out, uh, and also just accelerate like the process time there. Um, so like getting those ACH or virtual cards out is like almost instant when it's like compared to like the time it takes for the vendor to get a check payment. Um, and then just increasing like that payment precision, making sure that like the right amounts are going out at the right dates, the right times. Um, like it's much easier to do that when it comes to digital payments in comparison to like some of those manual payment options like checks. Um, some of the other areas where this helps too is like better like compliance with some of your internal like business rules. Like a lot of organizations are trying to get like converted over to those like electronic payment methods. So like whether that's a like internal rule or some other like compliance that you're trying to um to to like convert to. um so uh, so like doing that in-house can be really challenging. Next on our list here, we're going to talk about some of the benefits of like moving over to these like e-payments as well. So like better cash flow and like visibility. So like that real time tracking like of those payments, of the statuses in one view, like versus having to log into the bank, see if checks were cashed, or see if the funds went through that EFT. Like having to like keep up with all of those payments is very challenging. Um, like fraud protection, right? Like spending all of that time trying to make sure that all your payment instructions are like accurate within your ERP. Is a big like time and resource issue there. And then like the like big one too is like faster delivery. So like once they're converted over to that e-payment, like getting that payment to the vendor, much faster, can give you like other benefits as well, such as being able to take advantage of like payment terms maybe that your like that your vendors offer much easier. And then finally, some of the other items that we wanted to talk about here too were like consolidating payments, right? Like being able to see like a list of all of your like outstanding payments. We'll go ahead and consolidate those for you once you're ready to pay those invoices, and like make sure we're sending your vendors like those consolidated payments as well. Um, and then being able to like negotiate those payment term discounts like we discussed on the previous slide as well. I'm going to go ahead and dive right now into just a demo here. Now, like this demo is going to start us out with the AP invoice process, right? Just a quick overview of what our platform can like deliver from the AP invoice automation side, and then we'll lead into the payment processing side as well. So this is our paper. Sorry, having some microphone issues there. Like this is our PaperSave homepage here. So this is where all of your end users would start. And then I'm going to go ahead and just dive directly into our workflow area. So I am an admin of this workflow. I see everything that's currently going through this workflow, no matter who's the owner. By default, your end users are only going to see the items that they're assigned to review. I'm going to go ahead and click new to add some new items in here. Now that we can manually add new items in here, like dragging and dropping them in, scan some items in with a scanner. We can also monitor that email box that you may already have where all of your vendors are sending in those invoices. I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop an invoice in here, and you can drag and drop as many as you'd like in here. And then as soon as we do that, we're going to process OCR on this invoice, try to pick out who's the vendor, what's the invoice number, the invoice amount, the date, those sorts of things. Now, while OCR is processing, just a quick overview of this screen. So here's my invoice here, right here in the middle. We have some annotation options on the left-hand side here to add, like sticky notes, highlights, anything to the document. On the right-hand side, we have our fields. So these are fields that we're going to use actually to push data into your ERP. Now, what fields you see on the right-hand side here, these are fully customizable, and they may change depending on which ERP you have. So like you saw these fields populate, that was OCR picking out like some of this information, as well as some automations that we have in place to pick up the rest. So once we picked up the vendor, we went out to the ERP to get the like remit to address for that vendor. Like once we picked out the invoice date, we calculated the due date based off of the payment terms set up on that vendor. So like we do have some automations there as well to help like reduce some of that data entry. We also have the ability to do things like check for duplicates within your ERP. So this one's a duplicate in the ERP. I am going to go ahead and just change my invoice number here. And I'm going to change my invoice date because this invoice is a little old there. And we have a bunch of other fields here. I can determine who needs to approve this invoice from here. I'm not going to spend too much time on the like approval side of things. But like we will talk about it briefly. And then we have our GL distributions here on how we should expense that like invoice. This table here may be different depending on which ERP you have. So like you should see like columns that are familiar to you like once we get you deployed. And there's many other fields here. Like all of these may not be relevant to you right now. I'm going to go ahead and submit this item into the workflow. Now, if I were to select a like approver, it would go directly to that approver. That approver would get an email notification saying that they have items to like review. We can also send out like reminder emails there as well. So now we'll see that item showed up in my grid here. It's in an AP review step. From here, my like AP processor one could open this item. We can send it to a like reviewer here if I were to select one of these reviewers, or I can just submit it directly to my ERP. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and submit that directly to my ERP. And at that point, we're going to make a live call to your ERP to create that invoice. So there's no like exports or imports happening. We are directly connected to your ERP to like make that, to do that data entry. And we'll give that just a couple seconds here for that to come back to us. And it should come back to a payment review step. So if I filter my workflow list down, maybe I only want to see the items in the payment review step. So think of this as all of your open invoices. These are, so like this list would contain all of your unpaid invoices that are ready for payment here. So I can select multiples or do them one at a time. And I can send those out for payment approval. Now, this payment approval process can follow whatever payment approval process that you would need. So if you need all of your payments to get approved by the controller or by the CFO before they come out, or like before they go out to the vendor, we can set up that approval process within PaperSave instead. So I'm going to go ahead and just send this one item out for payment approval. I'm going to clear my step filter so I can watch where that one goes next. Now it goes to this payment approval step. So same thing, we can do like email notifications to let them know that they have items to approve, and they can like approve them from the list here. So if I filter this down to the payment approval step here, there's my one item. And then like Angela is the current owner of this item. She's going to be able to either like open up each invoice like individually, or she can select multiples from the list here and click approve. So like if she were to open it, she would see that same view that we saw before, just with those approve and like reject icons here. So let's say Angela go ahead and she approves that item there. We have the option to also like escalate, maybe like invoices over a certain amount would need to like also get approved by the CFO. right? That's a really easy routing rule that we can implement for you as well. So now this goes to a payment pending step. So what happened as soon as we clicked approve is that um, we are waiting for invoices to like come in so that we can do proper batching. So we're going to batch your like invoices together based on the vendor and your like bank account where those funds are coming from. Certain amount of time has elapsed and we've done that batching. We're going to go ahead and send those batches of payments to our payment processor. That payment processor is going to go ahead and make that payment, and then once that payment once those payment details come back, then we will go ahead and create the payment automatically within your ERP and go ahead and apply those invoices to that payment. Now, if I open up one of these that are completed, because that could take up to 15 minutes for that batching to happen and for that transmission to take place for the payment, I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these that are in our completed step of our workflow here. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the history. So there's a lot that happens to like this invoice here. Like if we scroll all the way down here we had some approvals like on the invoice side. This is where we created the invoice inside of your ERP. And then we get back some details like about that record that we created. And then if we scroll up, here is our payment approval that happened. Then we have some payment status updates. So like the payment went into the queue. That's where we do all of our batching. Like then the payment status changes to pending once we send it to our payment processor. And then once the payment processor receives it, they make sure all of the details are correct. They know what vendor they're sending the payment to, like the like dates are correct. It's not a duplicate invoice that we're paying, that sort of thing that they're checking for. Then it's going to go to our like in progress status. And then there is there are like potentially like a few other like payment statuses that could be like in between there. And then it's going to be payment status of sent, meaning we've sent the payment to the vendor. Now that payment type that we could send, it could be check, it could be like EFT, it could be virtual card, it could be wire. There's like many different payment options there, and they would all flow through the same process, right? Like the good news there is, like we would, you wouldn't need to like determine what kind of invoices get paid how. Like we would follow any information you have set up on the vendor record, or like if you're in our like virtual card program, like depending if that if vendors enrolled like in the program or not, we would send it automatically out via virtual card. Now, some other key features that we have here as well. So like any of these grids here, you can search and filter on. So like when you're building your payment batch, like if you want to sort it by vendor, you can do that. Like we can pull in some other fields that may be helpful for you as well, like vendor class or some other fields to help you, like build your payment batches out. Like you can search this grid to see, like to see any like type of like vendors maybe that you're looking for. So maybe I want to see all of the Butler invoices. There's all of those. We also have some dashboard views here as well. So if I switch over to the dashboard, so like this is a list of all the historical invoices that have gone through that workflow with some fun stats here of, who are your fastest approvers, who's your slowest approvers. And then we can see all of the active like workflow items as well to see, like if there's any that we need to drill into to see, why they're coming up, like past due, right? So I have these 15 items here, like that are currently past due. I can drill into this and actually see like those invoices that are past due. We also have some search capabilities as well. So if you wanted to build some like robust like search like parameters, to like find your like historical invoices, see what the statuses of those are. Um, our browse area is a really quick and easy way to drill into your like ERP documents. And let's say I want to drill into all of my invoices and I want to see all of our Butler invoices. Here's all of those Butler invoices, and I can drill in and see those documents here as well. We do also have a mobile app as well, so that your like approvers can approve them on the go as well. And outside of that, that is most of the features and functionalities that I wanted to show today. So we do have some Q&A items. So like one of the items that was in our Q&A now for checks, will the check number and check date be provided? If I drill into one of these items that were completed here in our workflow, one of the things I forgot to show you, and thank you for the question, is if I scroll down a little bit here, we do populate, that was an older one. Let me go to something a little newer here. If I look at the one that was completed earlier this week, we will see some extra fields get populated here, like at the bottom. So like we're gonna tell you how we paid that invoice, when the payment was sent, like the payment amount, and then the current status. So this current status will update as that status changes. And then we have the payment ID. So this is going to be the like unique identifier for our payment processor for that particular payment. Now, like in this case, like the payment amount may not be the amount of the invoice, right? Because if we're consolidating your like invoices like into a single payment, so that may consist of 2 or 3 different invoices for that payment amount. So like that's why we break that out here for the payment amount. Now, like as far as the check number, that was one of your like questions in the chat. The check number, we don't necessarily always get. It depends on like which option that you qualify for our like payment solution. Um, but in some cases that'll come from your like ERP actually, so like they should match. And in other cases, you can pull up the check number through like an online portal, like with this ID to like get that check number. But great questions so far. All right. Some other questions that we had a couple come in ahead of the call as well. So some of the integration options, like how does it look like for us to integrate into your ERP? So it's a pretty straightforward process, especially if you're on a cloud-based ERP, where like we usually just connect to that ERP via the like APIs. So some of these fields that you see here on the right-hand side that have this lookup option, like this is data coming out of your ERP. So like this is a list of just all of the vendors. We're doing some nightly syncs to sync that data out just for like performance reasons, so that this lookup can be very like responsive. Same thing for like that duplicate invoice check, right? Like we're syncing that data directly out of the ERP. Like GL account number, like lookups and project lookups, all of that we're getting out of the ERP. So like if you have an on-prem like ERP that we support, we do support that as well. That does involve some installation activities like in your on-prem environment so that we can hit that data. But it's also pretty straightforward as well. Let's see. What else do we have here? When it comes to like cost savings for your business, like specifically, like really like what that cost savings is going to depend on like what your payment volume is and like what your different like types of payments are that you do. So if you do, like primarily like a lot of checks, you're going to see probably a pretty big cost savings there. But like even if you're doing like a lot of EFTs, there's still some cost savings there, especially if you have a lot of different bank accounts that you're doing those EFTs out of, because we're going to automate that process for you. So there's no more like generating of that EFT file, having to upload it to the bank and all of that. One of the questions that came in is, are you printing and mailing out paper checks? So in most cases, the answer to that question is yes. In some cases, we will have your bank do the printing of the checks and mailing them out. And for our like other options, we will mail the or we will print and mail those checks, but those checks are going to be funded by your bank account. So that does still give you the opportunity to take advantage of check float if that's something that you are currently tracking. All right. Just looking through some of our other questions here that we have. So some of the other options when it comes to like mitigating fraud, right? Um, so you notice throughout this process, right? There was no opportunity for me to like enter in payment instructions, right? So like giving it a like account number and like routing number for that EFT, right? So like that's because in both of our payment options that we have, like either we are pulling those payment details out of your like ERP, so like that puts the control of those payment instructions to your AP team, or our like third party payment processor is going to be the one that's going to be reaching out to your vendors to like get those payment instructions and to be updating them along the way as well. So even if we're not doing virtual cards and like we're just doing EFTs, right? Like we're not, like giving your end users the ability to, change those payment instructions along the way. For virtual cards, what bank do you use? We can respond back to you on that one. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know we have that like information for you. So like we can supply that to you for sure. All right. Well, thank you all for the time. Feel free to schedule some time with us to go through any further questions that you may have. So I thank you all. Have a good day.